Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 12th, 2023 Fairfield Board of Education regular meeting. Call the meeting to order. With us this evening is Mrs. Rinaldi, Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, Mr. Asa, myself, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Guernsey, Mrs. Flynn, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Krasnoff. If you could, and as well as our superintendent, Mr. Testani. And could you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? And Mrs. Guernsey, can you start us off this evening, please? Welcome, students. Good to see you all here today. Looking forward to hearing your reports, so you guys can start off however you'd like in whatever order.
Hi, happy holidays, first off. I hope everyone's had a nice weekend, So most recently, last Friday, we had our mock trial. We won against Kingswood Oxford to make the state playoffs, so I'm happy to see where we're going next. Candlelight, that'll be next week. Students are actually going to see a preview on the 22nd, and obviously the public's getting tickets, and I hope all of you have tickets. It's going to be a great concert. We're having our pep rally this Friday on the 15th. It's for our winter sports, of course. Peace Day went well, if you recall. We had that approximately 2 weeks ago. We had a lot of different speakers. It went well. Sadly, the fire alarm went off during one of the speakers' times, so it got cut off. So some classrooms this year are deciding to be very festive and, decorating their classrooms in festive colors. The Bella Boutique actually opened, and it's open to the public from 2:10 to 4, which is when students will be operating. So Ludlow and Ward will be performing their Christmas Carol at the Burr Mansion. I believe that's the 17th. Sorry, the 15th through the 17th. And if you're lucky, you'll see Mr. Hatsis over there as Bob. Sorry, I've never seen this, so I don't. Yeah, Bob Cratchit. That's by Fairfield Center Stage, by the way. We also have our boys basketball tournament at Prep. It's versus Prep and Notre Dame, so it's going to be a fun day. It's the 27th of December and the 28th of December, respectively. We also have the girls basketball tournament at Ward, which is the 28th. We also have the FHS wrestling tournament, which is this Saturday, where our wrestling team will be going off against other, like Ward, and I believe Westport's supposed to be there, but I don't know if they're coming this year. That's pretty much all that we're having for this month of December, and I'm excited for the new year and the holidays as well.
Okay, good evening. So first we have Caroline at Ward. So since last Thursday, the music groups at Ward, chorus, jazz band, etc., have been working tirelessly hours per week since last week. So that has been a battle for them, but they're enjoying it. The first performance is this Friday. It's during period 2 for upperclassmen, so juniors and seniors. The second is the community show, so it's open to the public, and that's next week, Tuesday evening. They have one show at 6:30 p.m. and another following at 8:30 p.m. And then on Wednesday, so at Ward, we have the 5th and 8th grade show, and that'll be great for them to see it as well.
Good evening, everyone. Ward is all about clubs, and all the students love getting involved. I don't know one student that isn't in a club, which is really awesome. So we have some club updates for you guys. Chess Club took a slight hiatus after COVID, but I'm glad to announce that they are striving with 20 to 30 members. Key Club has been sending packages overseas to soldiers for the holidays. Fashion Club is partnering with FIDM, which provides scholarships, intern opportunities, and will excitingly be going to Paris next spring.
All right, continuing with the club theme, we have math team and science team, both headed by Mr. Apgar, our physics teacher over at Ward. So the math team has been practicing very hard for the Fairfield County Math League meet, and those are actually monthly, so they've been competing since the start of the school year. Um, those are hosted at Wilton High School. And then the science team is still getting into gear in the Northeast to compete in the Northeast Science Bowl at UConn in March.
Still continuing with our amazing clubs here at Ward, Best Buddies will be having their gingerbread decorating tomorrow the 13th from 2:15 to 2:30 in T27.
All right, moving on to next week, we have the Amstud Newport field trip. And for those of you who don't know, Amstud is the AP Lang and Comp combined with the AP US History class. And we will be going to Newport, Rhode Island next week, Thursday, December 21st. So that'll be a great way to kick off break right before we head off. We'll get to tour all the great mansions and other attractions Newport, Rhode Island has to offer, and we'll be pretty much up there all day. So that'll be very exciting.
Our business department and DECA had a great week last week. We went over to Mohegan Sun and got a behind the scenes tour. We toured the presidential suite, the royal suite, backstage, behind the stage, on stage. It was really awesome. We then got to learn a lot about proper hospitality and how it works in the business industry. DECA raised over 110 dozen donuts to bring back to Ward, and each dozen was bought by someone, and then the money went towards DECA and the business department.
Then lastly, we cannot forget our sports over at Ward. A great start of the season. We had the girls basketball last night. They had an amazing win against Notre Dame High School. So that was an awesome way to start off.
And finally, I would like to say good luck to all the winter sports as they are just starting off. Our co-ed Ludlow Ward hockey teams, girls and boys. I can't wait to see. Winter sports are my favorite season, so I can't wait to see where the season goes. Thank you so much.
Good evening and happy holidays. So tonight at your seats are presents from the Walter Fitz students as a thank you. There is soap and lip balm. The soap is made of honey from our bees, goat's milk, and glycerin, and our organic lip balm is made of beeswax, vitamin E, and coconut oil. These projects were funded by a Donors Choose grant and made by our students. This Thursday, students who take the science courses, Dangerous Planet, the Cosmos, and Environmental Chemistry are going to the Discovery Museum for a customized planetarium show and a tour of the museum. We are grateful to Sacred Heart University and the Discovery Museum for the grant funding for this trip and the opportunity to attend. On Friday, our junior and senior students will be attending the Ward, Carillon, and the Ludlow Candlelight performances during the school day.
On Thursday, December 7th, we went to Sacred Heart University to videotape Sacred Heart students answering questions about binge drinking, and this is a part of the public service announcement we are creating with our Fairfield Cares grant. In the next few weeks, we will be editing the video and recording the PSA. This week, one of our artistic students began work on our mural in our all-purpose room, or our lunchroom. It is a mural of the school mascot, the wolf, and we are very excited to see her talented work. This week, our mentorship program advisors met via Zoom at Walter Fitz and Louise Marin Tag program to discuss our agenda and schedule. The Pollinator Pathway program is going to invite both schools to come to Walter Fitz and give a presentation. The students in the Dangerous Planet class are going to teach the students how to begin to plant seeds for their garden. And on December 22nd, students and staff will get together for a portion of the day for a holiday celebration with a potluck meal, which will represent our different cultures. We will hold our final restorative circle for 2023. And we want to thank you for the opportunity to represent our school and wish you a happy holiday season.
Thank you so much for all those updates. So many fun and exciting activities going on. And thank you so much for these special gifts that you made. It's so nice that you get them, that know that they were made at Walter Fitzgerald. So really appreciate those to you all. And I'll open up to the board. Does anyone have any questions for our board members?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
How long did it take to make some of these?
It doesn't take very long, surprisingly. The soap sets very quickly because we don't use like lye or anything. It's just the glycerin and the goat's milk. They don't take very long to make. Yeah, like a class period.
Well, thank you for it. Appreciate it.
Well, we certainly wish you all the best with the remaining of this year at school and all the exciting events that are coming up. And if you'd like to stay, you may. Otherwise, we wish you a very happy holiday season and New Year. And we look forward to seeing you in January. Thank you so much, guys. Okay, moving on to public comment. If anybody would like to give public comment on any of the agenda items this evening, you can come forward at this time. All right, moving on. Presentations. Music department presentation and first reading of proposed courses and text. Mr. Hughes. And we'll be looking at the first reading of course curriculum Guitar Studio, first reading of course curriculum Music Theater Explorations, and the first reading of textbook musicals, The Definitive Illustrative Story. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. James Evajancic, Chief Academic Officer, and tonight I'm joined by Mr. Hughes, who is our District PK to 12 Music Coordinator. You may remember over the past few months, probably about 6 months ago now, we revised in the Policy Committee the graduation requirements, which move the arts up to the humanities category. And, you know, we've made an effort to talk to those departments to look at what other offerings might be attractive to our students at the high school level. So before you tonight are 2 new courses in 1 textbook that goes along with the musical theaters course. They are Guitar Studio, which of course complements our Piano Studio course, and Musical Theater Exploration. Mr. Hughes has worked with the high school administration and of course his department at the high school, the music teachers, to devise these courses that are before you tonight. As always, in your packet are the course enrollments and requests for the past few years, the curriculum documents, and of course the presentation that Mr. Hughes will now walk you through. Thank you.
All right, good evening. Thank you so much for providing me an opportunity to speak a little bit about some proposed courses for the 24-25 school year. Very excited to talk a little bit about Guitar Studio and Musical Theater Explorations. But before I do that, just want to provide a little bit of context and background about why exactly we're looking at this now and what some of the goals were for creating new courses in the high school music department. So as Dr. Zavajancic just recognized, there's been a relatively recent change in graduation requirements for arts credit that we want to make sure we're providing really good, robust opportunities for all of our high school students to realize in their high school career. Also, we want to try to maybe improve our arts access a little bit. So as I'm sure many of you are aware, if you're looking at schools of a similar size in Durgs A and B, we're about 58% arts access in the Next Gen Accountability Report. And this contrasts FPS district-wide at about 42%. So obviously we want to legitimately reach out to all of our high school students and get them to be a little bit more engaged in our music department. We have, as you're all aware, very amazing, robust performing ensembles, but we want to engage more students into the department as a whole and not just in the performing ensembles. And then, of course, too, we want to take a look at our enrollment trends in the non-ensemble music related courses. So Dr. Zavajancic did a 3-year look back. I put together just, a comparison of what is currently happening in the music department this school year. So as you can see in the non-ensemble electives, we're basically looking at single-digit enrollment. So we've got about 1.1 FTE total dedicated to servicing about 64 students. Clearly, we want to improve that, which brings us to this evening's proposals. We wanted to identify, so when in looking at considering what are we going to offer our students and how are we going to expand our course offerings, we had, I guess, sort of guiding principles kind of. We want to obviously increase student enrollment in non-performing music courses. So, of course, we have a few of those now, except a lot of the reality of these courses is they slant towards performing ensemble students, right? If you have a high achieving instrumental student, they're going to kind of want to gravitate towards maybe learning about music theory and deeper structures about how the music that, they're performing was composed. Or if you have a high level, vocal student, they might want to get to that next level of vocal, skill through taking vocal studio, right? So those are the students that are kind of engaged in these elective courses. Music technology, piano studio, they're relatively popular. The enrollment in those is generally maxed out, but due to the technology needs of those, being maxed out means only servicing 8 students at a time. We're limited by our equipment and our space. To get a new workstation would probably be $2,000 to $2,500, and we don't have a lot of space in the classrooms that are there now to add more than, say, 2 or 3 or even 4 workstations, and that would come at a premium. So is there something that we can do to engage more students, at that level? We also just want to provide additional opportunities for students to satisfy the fine arts graduation requirement. Of course, this includes getting students, as I previously mentioned, into the music department that's not already there. But at the same time, can we offer courses that maybe are an enhancement for the students that are highly engaged, right? So it's kind of a 2-pronged approach for them. And of course, if we do all of that successfully, it'll improve our arts access, right? So that led us to having conversations with teachers, having conversations with students, doing like a DIR comparison. What are these other high school offerings, of similar size and scope? And that led us to guitar studio and musical theater explorations, which I'll talk a little bit about. So guitar studio, at the risk of, making a mountain out of a molehill, it's a course that is designed to teach students how to play the guitar. They get to come in. They don't need to have a guitar. They don't need to have any musical experience or background or training. They come in with just the thirst, desire, excitement to learn a musical instrument, to learn how to play the guitar. And this course will set them up for success. We can service about 18 to 20 students per semester. It's a semester-based course. So 40 semesters, that's a lot of semesters, 40 students per year. And they can have a lot of voice and choice in the repertoire that they're playing while they're learning the skills, the chords, all those kinds of things. So I think certainly a lot of potential for a great opportunity for students that might want to learn how to play the guitar. The resource allocation for this between the 2 high schools, we're looking at about $8,800 for guitars, some additional, funding for professional development, for curriculum writing, so on and so forth. Total impact being about $10,000. And again, if you contrast this with, adding more workstations for music theory or for piano studio, that would only be like 4 workstations. So we're servicing 4 students with that same amount of money, whereas in the guitar course, we can service closer to 40. That brings us to the musical theater explorations course, which is also going to be a 1-semester elective course. The focus of that is to provide an introduction to the development of musicals. So the music faculty and I, as we were designing this curricula, having a lot of conversations about what we want the course to look like. And if we're trying to get students into the department that maybe aren't comfortable with or desire to pursue a performance-based opportunity, we want to give them something that's maybe a little bit different. So it combines some history, it combines, distinctly American art form, lens on the American musical, sorry, just a lot of talking. So the resource allocation for this course, some of the textbooks, which I guess we could talk about in a moment, some additional funds for curriculum writing, professional development between the 2 high schools. And do we talk about the textbook separately or? Okay. And so if we consider moving forward with both of these proposals, we can think a little bit about the impact beyond even just the next year. And right, so ultimately, we have courses that we're proposing, we have courses that we're running now, and as as even we're currently doing, right? Ultimately, the courses that run at the high school level will be driven by student enrollment requests. Where every year looks a little bit different at each of the high schools, depending on the number of enrollment requests that we receive. I'm anticipating that these courses may be a little bit more popular than some of our current offerings. And so we would adjust the FTE, not adjust the FTE, adjust the course offerings appropriately. Beyond that, if, there's potential for growth in both areas, right? We have potential growth for the guitar program. If it's super successful, we can have an intermediate guitar studio. And then similarly, there's potential growth for an expanded performing arts program. One of the joys or the benefits of offering a musical theater explorations course is that it's going to tie in or bring in students, I think, that are in our English acting that maybe want to explore a little bit more of the musical elements of that. Or we have students that are really engaged in the theater program, right, that are performing in the spring musicals every year that now can receive a credit for that course. So I think that there's a lot of potential there as we continue to move forward in our program. So I just drafted up, potentially based on enrollment, what might the enrollment look like next year with the same FTE allotment. You can see that potentially we can be servicing many, many, many more students than we currently are at our 64. And then, with the remaining FTE, we can offer music technology or theory or piano studio as needed. We can alternate years so that students have an opportunity to take, theory in even years and music tech in odd years, so that throughout the high school career, they have an opportunity to still get the full course offering. I think that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Mr. Peterson.
Hi, thank you very much. I looked at a lot of this with interest, especially since my high school senior now is in a 4-person music theory class that they're enjoying, and I think they're getting a lot out of. But they're that kind of high performance musician who they want to add like kind of a cherry on the top. It's not an intro to a musical thing, and I do appreciate that the courses you're designing are non-performance, because I think that may be a hurdle for some. The fundamental question I have is about zero FTE impact. Is there somebody on staff right now who can teach the guitar, and is that person the person who's teaching music theory? Do you see, like, if you're not going to run music theory but you're going to run guitar studio, do you see what I'm getting at?
Yes. So yes, we certainly consider the strengths of our current staffing at the high school level to support these programs, and they were part of the process of determining what new courses we would offer. And I think that, to your point about music theory, we still have extra FTE. Let me go back in a slide here. So we still have extra FTE sort of available, right? So even if we're running a semester of musical theater, if we're running 2 sections of guitar across the year, we still have FTE available to run musical theater. To run music technology or theory, and we can alternate that with that point 0.1 allotment between the 2 schools every other year.
Ultimately, you think that the current staff is cross-trained enough to handle this entire complement, even with the addition of musical theory and guitar studio?
Yes.
Okay. The only other question I have is on the textbook. We're going to give a separate presentation about textbook, or I can just do that now.
We should just do it. We don't have a separate presentation. It's a complement to the course.
I have it here if you'd like to look at it.
Well, I actually might. The thing about it, I kind of looked it up a little bit. It doesn't actually seem to be a textbook. It's not from a textbook publisher. And I understand, of course, you were talking about you're going to be designing curriculum, and I see that this would be probably an adjunct to that. But I guess my fundamental question is, you don't propose to use this like a text, like there's not unit 1, unit 2, unit 3 in it. Where? So
correct. You're right. It is not an actual textbook. We're not successful in finding an entire textbook dedicated to musicals. A lot of the theater texts that we found were about theater more broadly. So the way I guess it's more of a resource than a textbook, if we want to think of it that way. The way that it's organized and the way the course is laid out is basically chronologically, historically. So we're taking looks at swaths of time and then diving into individualized shows that demonstrate, the relevant historical periods.
No, I mean, I guess it's not a huge expense. If you're getting 40 of these at $40, that's $1,600 is understandable. It looks like it's a kind of coffee table book
Yeah.
that, is be useful for various things, but it's not going to drive the curriculum design.
Right. That's left mostly to the teachers.
If I could just add with that, it is integrated into the curriculum documents, and it is the main resource of the textbook in alignment with the textbook policy, which is why we put it forward as such.
Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I think the two courses sound very interesting and certainly appealing. I can see the appeal in them inherently for a lot of students. My question, I don't mean to make this sound negative, but a couple of questions, is that the way you're describing that our courses don't exist to save FTE. If there isn't enough interest in our courses, the FTE should be reduced. And the wording you were using made it sound like that the way our current courses are, for example, I do not understand why we are offering a course for 4 students. I don't. And I understand that that's, fulfilling someone's full contract. But this is something we ask about every budget cycle. And I understand when it's something like, for example, Chinese 4, and that often it gets combined with Chinese 3 because it's a smaller group and we're trying to let a student who started it in earnest as a 9th grader be able to see it through. But having a course with 5 students goes against everything that we always say we don't need to do a course audit because the course registration is the course audit. And that doesn't seem to be taking place here. And that's a little distressing because if we are looking at as tough a budget as I'm thinking, and we might need to be looking at cuts, I don't know. Please be clear to anyone in the public, I have no preview of this. But I don't understand that approach. So I'll just throw that out. Well, I guess, let me start that with that question. Why did we run a course that has 4 students? And there are a number of sections, that's just one, the music theory, but there are a few here that have very small numbers.
I don't have a specific answer to this particular one. It was an administrative decision there, and we are in the upcoming request cycle making sure that we look at these very particularly moving forward.
I'm not, because, then look at something like concert choir. Section was run with 2 students?
That one is nested, so when I give you that, I just pull it from the computer. So I don't know, I'm not sure which building you're looking at. Every now and then there is a student who can't meet a specific, maybe they can't be there on a certain day, so they have to be placed in a separate section, but they are nested. I left it as the computer runs it just to be clear on there, but it is not an additional FTE.
I'm not familiar with the term nested.
Similar to what you said about 3 and 4, when those numbers aren't high enough,
Okay.
they run at the same period.
Okay. And I thought one of the points about the music technology, so that max is at 8?
That's correct. So all of the piano studio courses and the music tech 1 and 2 courses, the maximum enrollment can be 8 due to the technology limitations and available.
But then we have, if 11 sign up for it, why is the decision made to run 2 sections, not at max?
Those courses run concurrently. So
If
the
it's the
students,
same course, how does nesting work? How is that not 2 different blocks?
I don't know the periods off the top of my head. I could look back to that.
I'll have to check the periods on that with music tech. Are you talking about music tech 2 or 1?
Well, that one was music tech 1. Yeah. And so then when you have something like wind ensemble, which has at Fairfield Ludlow High School, 1 section of 31 and 1 section of 6. You're telling me that that is not a 0.2 FTE or a 0.1 for one semester?
I will check that one as well and get an answer to you on what the FTE is allocated to it.
Yeah, none of the ensemble courses are running with single digits. Certainly all the ensemble, courses are running with multiple students. There are unique scheduling situations that maybe they needed to run a second section of that, but the ensemble courses also run the whole year. And we're not offering more than one of those courses at any one time.
All right, so I guess I would be interested in more explanation of these, and also interested in an assurance, and I guess through the chair to Mr. Testani, an assurance that we aren't running courses with 4 students.
So we've had several discussions over the last several weeks as we're preparing the budget, that prior to each high school running their schedule after course requests have been closed, we will be meeting with them individually and creating the number of sections per the number of requests that were received, to ensure that we can maximize class capacity.
Thank you. And then just my second question, there's the one thing you said, which I completely agree, is as with a daughter who was very involved with musical theater right through college. I can easily see she who is taking acting classes enjoying this musical theater course. The only, and I'll phrase it as a problem, is she's the last person who needs another course because she more than fulfilled the humanities requirement. So do you have any testimony from students that makes you think that a student who otherwise is only taking CAD or is taking woodshop or is taking courses not in the fine arts, who needs a fine arts credit, that these are courses that will appeal to them? Because the students who are taking acting don't need this. And again, I'm saying they would love it. I couldn't agree with you more that this is going to be a course very appealing to them. I just don't think they were the intended target for this course.
That's a fair point, and that'll be taken into consideration. I think we were thinking a little bit more along the lines of how can we get students involved in the music department that are not currently involved in performing ensembles.
But I thought the point was helping students to fulfill the graduation requirement with a course that they, in a department where they otherwise might not have been enrolled at all.
Oh, it was two-pronged. So both of those points, to bring extra students into the music department and to also, we're thinking of the students that we're not currently servicing in the music department. I wasn't necessarily thinking of it in the context of the humanities.
Thank you.
Ms. Guernsey.
Thanks so much for this presentation. I've been concerned about arts access for some time, and the accountability index isn't super great in our favor in that area. So I'm very glad to receive this presentation, and in particular, the guitar component class. I love that the guitars are being provided. We don't do that with other instruments, maybe with the exception of percussion, but I guess for the piano studio too, but this idea that you can come with just yourself and learn a musical instrument is fantastic. And I think that one problem with our music department is because we're so high achieving and so fantastic, I think it can be intimidating to non-performers. So having these courses that are accessible to anyone, I think that's wonderful. Concerning the small enrollment of classes, I like this idea of a solution of offering the small enrollment classes in like alternating years. And the only concern I do have with that is that we would just be really clear with students as they're entering our high school what the schedule would be for offering those classes, because I know in planning that our students think ahead to, I really want to take music theory when I'm a senior, like maybe that can finally fit into your schedule. And so to really have a good grasp, if that's the direction that you go, to make sure that that educational piece is there. But I'm very excited about both of these courses, and I could imagine with the musical theater course that it might even entice people to be welcomed into our musical theater programs, which I know are very accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Mrs. Flynn? Thank you so much for the presentation. As someone who is very involved in musical theater, same for high school and college, the musical theater course was incredibly appealing and something I would have wanted to engage in. But I did have a thought as I was reading through the curriculum. Was there any mindset in engaging, and I think it's called Kate, and forgive my ignorance, but like stage management or those non-performing pieces into it rather than waiting to see the appeal, like trying to engage students in from the non-performing end to the backstage end?
Yeah, that was part of the conversation is how much are we getting into the craft of like the production element of it. So we thought that that could potentially be better suited for another course down the line where, you know, we're getting into maybe more of the performance oriented elements, even if that performance is not music related, right? That we're talking about stage managing, set design, so on and so forth.
Seems like a really like good soft entryway for a lot of students that maybe are trying to fill a requirement and find a love. It's always, and the guitar, I'm married to a guitarist, so he read through the curriculum and it looked lovely. So thank you. Mr. Lee.
I'm going to go on the opposite thing with a student who's not into the arts. So my question would be, it's a great introduction to them, but what happens when I walk into that class and 6 of those kids are in the performances in high school? They're taking it because now they really get it. What about that kind of intimidation factor where now they don't have that knowledge, right? Everyone should be, this is introduction. Well, how are we going to prevent that? Can we prevent that? So just those kids that have no experience at all can really appreciate it.
Are you speaking to the guitar course or musical theater or
Musical theater, sorry.
Okay. Well, that is, so those, I think the responses sort of dovetailed there in that since the content of the musical theater explorations course isn't really centered around the performance elements, the students' prior performance or musical acumen or whatever, you know, would not be as relevant to the content that's going to be occurring in that course.
Yeah, follow-up. And I don't know if this might be an out of the box question. The show, you don't list any specific shows, you list time frames. I'm kind of like an old school Rodgers and Hammerstein kind of girl. Do you find that your high schools are doing those type of performances? Do you think your students would actually learn more about things we're not seeing in our schools right now and maybe be intrigued to kind of lobby for some, I would love a Finian's Rainbow situation, like something that we haven't seen, give them some exposure almost through this course that our current musical theater engaged students aren't getting?
Yes, I think there's potential there. I think at the moment, there's not a formal relationship between the music department and the theater program. Yeah. So, you know, possibility for, you know, the future.
Thank you. Mrs. Rinaldi?
So I'm jumping around a little bit here. I definitely love this. I think these are great. I'm definitely more of the introvert of the group, so I'd be very interested in these non-performing classes. I just did have one quick question on the resource allocation for Guitar Studio. Maybe I'm being a little pessimistic here, but guitar cases, picks, and tuners, $8,800. Are those used? Are those, I find that for, you said 20 students, correct? Would be enrolled. That number just seems a little low.
I have a quote there about it. So I can get a set from like Sweetwater is who we quoted through for about $200 for the full package per guitar. So the entry points is fairly inexpensive.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize. That's great.
Follow-up.
Is that because we're getting just one set of guitars for the classroom and the student, so they're not all getting their own to take home, or are they getting it to take home?
Yeah, so I budgeted for 20 guitars per high school. And so we wouldn't run more than one section at a time. Students would have the opportunity, they come with the, you know, the soft cases and stuff. Students can take it home and practice and, you know, be their instrument for the semester.
Mr. Krasnoff.
This is kind of a follow-up. So is it more theater history class? That's what it looks like from the curriculum.
Yeah, essentially.
So
yeah, it's sort of course of the history of musical theater.
So people that have performed, it's more the history. Even if you're a performer, everyone should be learning the history on similar level.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, this will be on our next agenda, these items for approval. So thank you very much. And if there's any follow-ups, please let us know.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to old business. Adoption of policy 5111, students admission/placement. Recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt policy 5111, students admission/placement. Can I get a motion, please? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, seconded by Mrs. Flynn. Any discussion on this item?
I didn't receive any questions, so I leave that up to the board.
Mr. Peterson?
I asked some questions at the last meeting about the 17 and 18-year-old language.
And I apologize. I thought Dr. Zavjanzik had spoken with you afterward, but regardless, it was asked in public, so I'll answer it, that the wording was taken straight from the statute language. And so we just went with it verbatim without altering it. I hear your point as you presented it, that it doesn't seem like it's entirely necessary, but that's why it was in.
I'm not really opposed to this policy in any way. It's just as a former member of the policy committee, this is the sort of thing that we tried to get rid of. So I'll swallow it this time.
Anyone else? All right, out to the public. Any public comment on this item? If not, back to the board. All in favor? Mrs. Guernsey, are you voting? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Adoption of policy 5141.5, suicide prevention. Recommended motion that the Board of Education adopt policy 5141.5, suicide prevention. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Lee, seconded by Mr. Asa. Any questions or discussion?
I, once again, received no questions on that one. This again was language that went back to staff to get their recommendation. So the language that you have before you is what staff produced that they felt served them best well. I do want to say thank you to Mr. Tastani regarding his follow-up to the questions he received from Mr. Peterson in terms of the availability of resources on the district website, and appreciate the attention to that.
Any board members have any questions? All right, out to the public. Any public comment on this item? No? All right, back to the board. All in favor? Mr. Asa? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Passes unanimously. All right, revised 2024 BOE meeting dates. So I brought this back to the board just after our discussion. I did go ahead and make some changes. There are 4 changes on this from the last time we met. The first change is way at the bottom there, that it will read that meetings will begin at 7 p.m. Instead of our 7:30. So that is set as long as everyone is okay with that. The second change was that the 2 town halls were removed in favor of looking to schedule those in a timely fashion. So we're removing somewhat of the convenience factor here, knowing that we would need to plan a special meeting for that when they are more timely, if everyone is comfortable with that change. And then the last one was a special meeting added to the second one in June. I had missed the previous version. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
So just 2 quick questions. One, so that on Tuesday, February 27th, that will be an executive session because it doesn't say it.
Yes, that's always an executive session for the evaluation, yes.
Right, but note that on the 2 June meetings, it says it. So that's why I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, we can add it so it's just consistent if that's what you prefer.
And then secondly, regarding the town hall, so because I didn't look back at it, does that mean we at the beginning of January should look to make a bylaw change, or are we still looking to have 2? We're just not committing to the timing, or might we be reducing that to 1?
Mr. Asa.
I apologize. I did not have a chance to bring forth something for this meeting. But I do believe the way and the spirit in which it's written in the bylaws now, it does say, scheduled at the discretion of the chair. So I don't believe, and it is generally a special meeting. So I think it's okay with not putting it out there for now. So I think the assumption would be that right now, unless the bylaws change, the chair will be scheduling 2. But I do plan to bring forward something in January.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee.
Just a quick question, and obviously being a new member, for the budget meetings in January,
Mm-hmm.
do we want to start an hour earlier? Because I just know how that process goes. So you start at 6 just for January meetings for the budget, or is that not necessary? No?
Mrs. Maxon Kelly.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting idea. We haven't found, because the 16th and the 23rd are exclusively the budget, we actually usually get out at a decent hour on those. Yeah, sorry. But I do appreciate that point, depending on how it goes, that maybe we're going to want to suggest to the chair if there are any issues for the meeting on the 25th. That might be a great idea. But again, just so far precedent has been reasonable.
Yeah, and I would just hesitate knowing that if we stray from whatever we submit, I don't think we can submit something that has different times on it to the town clerk. We would then be incredibly limited in terms of what we can discuss. So if something came up that we wanted, especially during budget, I would hate to constrain us in that.
Okay.
I would just say, did you have something, Mr. Issa?
I think if that were the will before we submit it to the town clerk, if we specified on that line that specific meeting and we didn't put it and we put the meeting time for each meeting, then that would be permissible. But I agree with Mrs. Maxon Kennelly. I don't think the precedent has been there to need to do it, but it's a good point. Just please don't add anything to those.
I cannot make that promise to you. Sorry. Mrs. Flynn.
I appreciate the flexibility on the town halls as a avid attendee of them. They often were hit and miss on when they were meeting the public need. But do you think it's worth noting on here that they'll still take place and just have some kind of language, or I'm not sure the precedent. So just for the public.
No, because this is really for posting purposes, for FOIA purposes. So it's going to the town clerk. So this will get posted. It's already in our bylaws and they will occur, and we will get the word out when they, hopefully do that in ample time.
Yeah, our communications director has been doing a great job with it. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried.
So the last thing I wanted to address, and then if you don't mind, Mrs. Maxon Kelly, do you want me to discuss the 26th, November 26th? Okay, so Mrs. Maxon Kennelly had raised a concern around Tuesday, November 26th. So I did go back and work with with Mrs. Brown on that date. Monday won't work because the RTM is in here and backing up into the week prior to that. Thursday, Friday is looking to be the start of the CAVE conference. Tuesday is already Board of Finance that week earlier. So it just became an issue of not having a day to move it earlier. And then we were literally just 5 days out from the week before if we went any earlier than that. So I respect the fact that that is Thanksgiving week. I can, unless everyone wants me to take it off and we run the risk of having to schedule and scramble for a special, unless everyone feels otherwise, I'd like to leave it and really try hard to be able to cancel it and know that we have the room and staff is aware, versus taking it off and scrambled. I did go back and run a little data for the last 3 years, and we did end up with 3 in the last 3 this year, 22 and 21, for whatever different purposes, whether special or regular. So we are running 3 in November in that combination historically. So if you guys want me to take it off, I will, or we hold it in leadership, and going forward, we can try to not need it. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Acknowledging all of that, and thank you for being so responsive about it. The one thing, though, at a minimum, I would suggest, because you're hoping to cancel it, that the organization will be moved to the 12th, because that we really would need to move ahead with. So that would be my one suggestion.
Is everyone okay with those changes then? I'll leave the 26th, but I'll move the organizational to the 12th. Is that okay? So everyone good? So what I will finalize with Mrs. Brown and for the town clerk from what you are seeing tonight is we will add executive session to the board evaluation, and we will flip organizational to Tuesday, November 12th. Mr. Issa.
Yeah, just to confirm, our bylaws do say in November of each year, so.
Whoops. Sorry. She knows. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. All right. All right. Approval of the revised pre-K to grade 5 English language arts curriculum. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the revised pre-K through grade 5 English language arts curriculum per enclosure number 1 of the December 6, 2023 meeting backup and as edited in kindergarten on page 51. Very wordy motion. But per the last meeting, there was this, oh, sorry. Second motion. Thank you, Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly, seconded by Mr. Peterson. Thank you. This is not before us. So before I open it up, just to be clear, there is a handout posted with this evening's agenda called ELA Houndout. That is just to literally demonstrate and show in blue text on page 51 of the kindergarten document that one edit on page 51 that was stricken on December 6th in error. So that explains that, just so we're all clear on exactly what we're voting on. It had to do with plural nouns like dog and dogs, wishes and wish, in case that doesn't jog your memory. Any discussion, questions? I don't know if Mrs. Goss wanted to come up. Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
I just wanted to say a very sincere thank you to Ms. Goss and all the work that staff did. We certainly, and we had a lot of questions, and I was just enormously appreciated how responsive staff was to them, how thorough the explanations were. So just wanted to say thank you and acknowledge all of your work and the work of everybody who collaborated with you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lynn.
I want to second that. As a new member of the board, it was a little intimidating out the gate to see that on that first agenda. So I really appreciate staff and another first read and really giving us the time to go over those documents. And, you know, with something this lofty for our students, our staff, the work is, you know, on the paper. So it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Mrs. Guernsey.
Thank you for this extraordinary work. I'm happy to support it, and I just I'd love to add that, you know, while our cycle is usually a 10-year curriculum cycle, I hope that we might think of this project in a shorter term. And I don't know how to define that. I don't know if that's 3 years, 5 years, but I don't want to see 10 years with like leaving this untouched. It was an enormous undertaking, and I think that I would imagine that review prior to that would be helpful. So just making that statement. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to take it to public comment then. All right, back to the board. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on, new business, approval of Riverfield Ed Specs for RTU project, that the Board of Education approve the Riverfield educational specifications for the RTU replacement project. Can I get a motion, please? Mr. Asa, seconded by Mr. Lee. This is a straight approval, everyone, so there wasn't a first read on this, and I will open it up to Mr. Morbido and Mr. Papa George to walk us through this item. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for hearing this. I know it was kind of a short notice, but this will, with your vote for approval on this will put us in line for a application for reimbursement for this project. Mr. Morbido can go through the details of it, but just to be clear, this is a project that was completed at the end of last year and coinciding with the roof replacement at Riverfield. So it's no money. We're not asking for money. We're just doing this as a formality for a reimbursement.
Any questions? I have a question. I do believe this requires a building committee, correct?
That is correct.
So what are we thinking about that at this point in terms of, are we going to have a separate building committee? Is this going to get roped into the current HVAC IAQ committee, or?
Ideally, it would end up going to the HVAC IAQ building committee.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you very much. I'll take it out to the public. Any public comment on this item? Back to the board, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously. All right, first reading of UI energy projects at Burr and Walter Fitzgerald.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to turn this one right over, Mr. Morabito. This is a great opportunity for us with working with our utility company.
Hi, the name of the program well, first of all, I'm new to a lot of you. I'm Sal Morabito. I'm the Director of Construction and Energy Services. The proposal that you have in front of you for each of those schools is a program that's called Energy Opportunities. What we do with that program is there's rebates and incentives to upgrade our lights to more energy efficient lighting. It's paid for by incentives and on-bill financing that is 0%. The payback is faster than the payout, so we're saving money day one at completion of the project. At the end of the financing, we're seeing the full effect of the savings or reduction in energy usage. We've done multiple projects with this. I know of projects going all the way back to 2007. The last time that we did one of these was in 2019 at Roger Ludlow Middle School, but we've touched, I don't want to say all the buildings, but at least a dozen of the buildings with this program over the years.
Any questions? Mr. Peterson.
Hi, thanks. I've seen several of these come through. Something you said just jogged in my brain. Have we gone back and done any kind of audit to make sure that we are getting the savings that we're kind of being pitched?
Just cursory that we're seeing that usage is down at the buildings upon completion, but not a full audit to say the model is saying.
Yeah, not fixture by fixture. I'm not really yet, but.
No, but we can put it into WatchWire and do some measurements and verifications on that.
Well, that would be great. That's what we're paying for that for. So that might be interesting to see at some point.
Right. I'm looking forward to trying that too.
Yeah, I'm going to do a follow-up on that. So I remember the last time we did this and it had the same similar breakdown. So I'm just wondering if for next time when we come to the vote for this, if the breakdown was met or exceeded what they said it would in this proposal. So on page 3, for example, right, where it says the estimated annual money savings and the estimated money saved for the 5-year warranty period. If we did one in 2018, the same breakdown was in that presentation as well. So I'd be curious just to come back next time or in a Friday packet or something. It said this, and this is where we were, if that's available.
I'll pull out the last one for Roger Ludlow. I'm not sure what the the cost per kilowatt hour that was used for that projection. And here again, we're using a round number. Each month our energy cost for electricity is different because delivery is different and demand charges are different. So I'll try to get something to explain it to the board in the next packet.
Yeah, I think the summary here is we're looking to know if these estimateds are turning into actuals. Yeah.
Yep, I understand what you're asking.
Okay, Mr. Lee.
Hi, so I have a couple questions on these. It says interior and exterior light fixtures. So does that mean that we'll use Berg Elementary as an example? They will pay to replace the light fixtures inside and the system that goes attached to it. So I'm comparing it to what I know, right, with Mill Hill and Holland Hill and the switches and things like that.
It's not an upgrade of. So you're asking about a lighting control system. These are fixture upgrades. So if you had an incandescent bulb in a fixture here, they would take the guts out, take the ballast out, put in a LED driver and LED bulbs. There's no central control system like we had at the Holland Hill or Mill Hill project.
So wouldn't those systems actually though be saving us on electricity, not just the light? So like, for example, Burgess still has a switch. You switch the light bulb out, but the teacher or something, they don't turn it off when they leave. Whereas the other schools, there's a timer, everything switches off and everything's time sensitive. Don't we, how's that gonna be saving us electricity power if we're not switching the system?
Okay, if you look at the matrix on that spreadsheet, it tells you what the existing fixture is using as a wattage and what the replacement fixture would be. So it's just a straight reduction in the wattage usage of the fixture. What you're talking about is, the timing of it. We can go to 24 hours, 7-day a week education and our estimates wouldn't be kept. So we have custodians that do shut off the lights and, make sure the building's buttoned up at the end of the day. Is it necessary to have the lighting control system? There's multiple ways to do it instead of the Lutron system that we have over at Holland Hill and Mill Hill.
So basically we're getting free light bulbs.
Different light bulbs, yes.
Mr. Krasnov.
Thank you for the presentation. So when you're talking about the light bulbs being replaced, are we going with the permanent type LEDs that run 10 years? Life expectancy is done, you got to replace them completely? Or are we going with just the bulb LEDs that are being swapped out component wise?
Well, we don't have, it would be new drivers in place of the ballast, because LED lights don't use ballast, they use drivers. And it's a fixture, it's a bulb replacement for the most part. There are some fixtures that are going to be swapped out, but mostly like panels like this, which were old troffer type fixtures. They would basically gut out the system and put in an LED system, retrofit it.
So we're not going to need to swap these every 10 years now?
No, not the whole fixture. The life expectancy on LED bulb is supposed to be 20 years. They do fail. There's RMA, the warranty on them, I believe, is 10 years. So you can do a return merchandise authorization, they send you a bulb and you do go and replace them. So I don't want to say it takes away all the replacement, but that's one of the benefits is that you're not doing a lot of light bulb replacements. So there's labor savings that are not accounted for.
Mr. Lee.
Good, thank you.
So if any of these schools need to be fixed on and stuff, are these going to be compatible with putting in new light systems or something like that? That's no issues, right?
You're talking about if we put in a lighting control system? Yeah, there are end devices on the lighting control system.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, Mrs. Flynn.
This is a quick one, just your line. It says in the document, I circled it, virtually eliminate maintenance issues, and excuse my lack of knowledge about RLMS, but in that time frame, have you seen any maintenance issues? It says virtually guaranteed for a period of 5 years. So do you have a reference base from RLMS you can give us? Just an offhand, I don't need.
There's always some that, just any big system, you're going to find the defects. So initially there were some bulbs that were replaced that went out premature failures. They got replaced and we're not having any major issues there. I can talk to the custodian to see his experience, but we're not having problems in that manner.
So it seems to fall in line with the document, which is good to hear.
Okay, thank you very much. This will be back on for our next meeting for approval. Oops, sorry.
Sorry, just one quick thing I think it's important to mention because I know it came up last time we talked about doing an LED update, is that
exterior fixtures, and this is a point that's brought up by the public, is that we use the color of the lights that we use, or the temperature of the light, is 3,000 to 3,500 Kelvin, which is a softer white, as opposed to 5,000. That's the fear of some public members, which is a very glaring bluish light, and it affects birds and, wreaks havoc. We don't do that. So we can't, we keep the exterior lights in the right temperature range.
Teresa.
Yeah, just one question. Just out of curiosity, when you're planning these projects and everything, how much discussion or collaboration with the Sustainable Task Force goes on? Have they had any input or any suggestions on this? Or I know sometimes we do things and then they show up at a meeting and have suggestions. So
No, there's no interface with the task force on this. This is truly just a mechanical thing that we do when the opportunity arises.
We will bring it to them though, because I do meet with them monthly now, so we can bring this to them.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, update ECC programming, Mr. Mancusi. And there is a handout at our desks that was not in our backup, and I do believe it has been posted as a handout in our meeting area for the public.
Good evening, everybody. Rob Mancusi, Executive Director of Special Education. I'm here with our Special Education Program Director for Early Childhood Education, Kristen Bruno. We're going to go through a brief preliminary update on where we are on ECC programming for the 24-25 school year. And this will be discussed in more detail during budget time.
Good evening. And just for some of the new board members, I know some of you are familiar with our programs, but just wanted to give you a little overview. Our motto is Early Childhood Center, Fairfield's learning community begins here. Back in, I believe it was the 18-19 school year, we did a self-study and presented some information to the board. Out of that came our vision and the 4 key components. So the 4 things that we hold dear and we think are most important to our effective programming is welcoming families as partners to create a welcoming and supportive community for families. It is their first experience with the Fairfield Public Schools. Providing a continuum of services so we can be flexible and respond to student progress. Third is providing an environment that's designed for the interests, strengths, and needs of the preschool age child, and providing staff with that experience and expertise in working with this population. And finally, fostering an environment of collaboration so we're sure that kids are learning and practicing skills across all settings. So our programming is a comprehensive preschool program for kids beginning around their 3rd birthday up until the time that they are eligible for kindergarten. We provide services for students who've been identified with delays or disabilities, and this could include classroom services, related or itinerant services, part of a student's individual education plan. We also provide a comprehensive preschool program for typically developing children that families choose the ECC for their preschool experience. They apply through an application process, and it is a tuition-based program with full, reduced, and free options based on family income.
These numbers here in part represent current enrollment in ECC ward classes as of yesterday. Both our morning sessions and our afternoon sessions, and we'll get into the ratio soon, but those numbers include students with disabilities as well as non-disabled peers. There's some more of those classroom enrollment numbers. So currently, as of December 11th, we have currently 145 preschool students at ECC Ward. We have 58 at ECC Stratfield, and we have a total of 203, obviously, as of that date. In addition to that, we have 34 students who currently receive itinerant services, such as speech, OT, social skills. These are our peer ratios currently. Again, everything, all this data is as of the 11th. We've done a lot of talking about establishing and maintaining a 50-50 ratio, 50% of students with disabilities, 50% of non-disabled peers. We have reported back to the board the past several years. We struggled getting to that, but this is currently where we are. I'll just give you a minute to look at those ratios. These are the ward numbers or percentages, and then these are the Stratfield percentages. You'll notice our Stratfield morning percentages are, more preferable than in the PM classes. Okay, and then the next couple slides talk about where we hope to go.
So in planning for the 2024 and 2025 school year, we had a number of factors to consider and are really driving what our requests and what we think we need for the coming year. One is, as you heard, when the English language arts curriculum was presented, we really found that we would like to have more time with our older students to be able to provide some of those pre-reading activities in small group and whole group. As you've been working with us all along, the peer ratio is something that we really need to address. Also, looking at our data moving forward since COVID, we find that students have some strengths in the area of interacting with peers, but we find we need to give them more experience and more practice when it comes to emotional regulation and interacting with peers. And that can be done with more time and certainly play. And then the fourth factor is really that change in legislation. So now we have students who were born between September 1st and December 31st who used to be eligible for kindergarten, and now aside from provisions in the legislation, should be maintained as preschool students moving forward. We did a survey of our current parents. We have 44 families that are impacted by the change in legislation. We sent out surveys. We had 27 unique responses. Of those, 11 intended for their child to stay in preschool, 16 intended for their child to attend kindergarten. There was sort of an open-ended response. So some of them said, well, it depends on my conversation with the team. And again, this survey was administered without the option of a full day pre-K.
What we will do is the parents that we did not get a response back from, we will reach out to get what their preliminary thoughts are. And as you know, this is just their initial thought. They may change their mind, but we will reach out to the other parents as well.
I would just add that this number are the kids we know now. We continue to evaluate students and receive referrals through the second half of this year.
And then you'll just see there's an additional 63 4-year-olds scheduled to return to the ECC for 24-25. And again, everything is as of December 11th. So what we're proposing, or what we'd like to consider, is the addition of some full-time classes. We'd like to do 6 full-time classes for next year. In addition to that, we would like to do 10 half sessions. So we need 5 classrooms to do the split sessions. It would be an addition of 3 teachers, would require a 3rd site. We've done some preliminary discussions between Mr. Papa George, Kristen and I, and Mr. Testani. We've spoken to some principals where there may be some space available to accommodate this. And in terms of the dollars attached to the request, there will be more specifics during budget presentation. Because we're looking at the staff we have and if we can use the staff that we have differently versus requesting new positions.
Mr. Issa.
Thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question on the enrollment numbers. And I appreciate the notes in the bottom where it says 9 students have been placed, but not started. And then several students in the ECC attend both AM and PM sessions. So when I look at ECC Stratfield, I calculate from the previous page or above actually 61 students, but show 58 here. So I'm assuming that 3 is the variance there of, so you have 3 students that are in both
Yes.
AM and PM.
Yes.
So when you look at ACC Ward though, I calculate 121 and you're showing 145. So my first thing would be is that number off? And then really wouldn't it be less than 121 if you had multiple placements? I guess I would start, do we have kids at ECC Ward that are in both AM and PM? Okay, so this is probably just a mathematical error.
We'll take a look at that.
Okay, I would just be curious because I think it shows that, the ECC Stratfield, your explanation below kind of highlights that. But maybe if we could look and just double check and make sure that these numbers are matching up and accurate, because I think it's important for us to know for planning purposes.
We will double and triple check these numbers.
Thank you.
Again.
I want to say, because I'm sure it's going to be asked, that we have had extensive conversations as we move forward. We will be balancing enrollment in classes and in locations starting next year with placements so that there's a more balanced class attendance and class enrollment at both sites. And then the third site that we create, we're not going to be looking at feeder patterns. Feeder patterns will start when kids enter kindergarten. In their elementary school, we're not going to consider feeder patterns any longer because, as you can see, it throws off heavily one site being more populated than others. So we're going to look at other factors when placing. So parents should be aware that there will be a different methodology to assigning students to a location. And again, we will look to have multiple full-day locations in the proposal when we finally decide on a third site.
Mrs. Rinaldi.
Thank you so much. My son actually attends full day at ECC Ward, and I agree with your mission. It is a partnership. When I left tonight to come to the board meeting, he was actually picking out presents for his speech therapist and his teacher. So it's been a life-changing experience. Thank you so much. Honestly, wonderful. I do want to ask though about new positions and staffing. You mentioned briefly that it didn't seem as though it would be an issue. And I've heard, that finding therapists and teachers in that area has been difficult. Is that something you're contemplating, or you do have, some data around it and there's more people willing to jump into those roles, or there is enough staff currently if there was a third site?
If we were to move forward with this proposal, we would post positions. I will tell you, staffing, and it's not just Fairfield, staffing for special education positions or speech pathologists or school psychologists, special ed teachers, it's a challenge everywhere. But we also know a lot of people so that we network well, and it is a district we work in that is, people like to work in Fairfield.
Mr. Lee.
So couple questions real quick. How come the afternoon with the peers and all the schools are under 30% on most places. And how are we going to fix that 50-50 ratio?
So most applicants are more interested in a morning class than an afternoon class, particularly parents of 3-year-olds. There's still the nap factor. So as much as I try to fill the afternoons, it doesn't always work. So that's where, when we look at the half-day classrooms, my proposal is to have the AM 3 only, but the afternoon mixed 3s and 4s, because we do have some families that their children attend a community preschool, but they also need special education services. So keeping that mixed model is an option, and it also lets us accommodate some 4s if the full day classes fill up.
Okay. And the second one, sorry. For the third site, we need specific things done at that, made sure it's already in place at that third site, whether it's ADA compliance or HVAC and everything inside. So that third site may tie into what we'll hear tonight with the updates on what's going on in town, correct?
I would add outside too, because the playground is a learning space in preschool.
So we're very selective where we're going to be able to do this based on, unless I'm missing something.
Well, we have Mr. Papa George to help us in determining an appropriate site. So, but yes, something that will be available for preschool children to attend in the fall.
Mr. Krasnov.
Thank you for the presentation. Just got a quick question about the breakdown of what type of student we're talking on some of these. So in terms of the ones AM and PM that do both, are those only IEP students, or some of them is a bit of a mix?
Right now, we do not offer double session to our peers. It's only through a child's special education needs.
And then in terms of the feedback, again, was that only IEP students, or that was a mix for the full day program?
The survey went to any child in the program, whether it's someone who just comes for speech and language therapy, someone's in the classroom on an IEP, or someone who's in the classroom as a peer. So all of those families of children who were born between September 1st and December 31st.
And it sounds like about half of them at this point, give or take, are interested. Okay, thank you.
Just to add, I think it's going to be difficult because parents are still on the fence. I've only received 2 emails regarding what the process would be if they decided that they would like to attend kindergarten and not stay back. Couple of conversations with parents that have said that they really don't know, and it's going to be a decision they make later on in the spring and early summer. So I think this is going to be a moving target moving forward. And Chair and I both attended the legislative breakfast on Friday, and that's a concern across the region that lawmakers made a change and then left so much open-endedness to it that it's put us all in a difficult position. So we're hoping that that may be revisited. I doubt it, but where it could either be a hard date like it was in the past of September 1st, or they give us a little more direction so that it's not so open-ended, excuse me.
Mrs. Flynn.
Hi there. Thank you for the presentation. I also have 2 very happy and thriving graduates of the ECC program, so I don't have to tell you all what it did for my family and our community. But we were one of those families that stayed engaged with a community preschool, and one of the reasons was a word that isn't in this document, but one that you said is play. So one of the things that I heard anecdotally was that because of the time span of those AM or PM, a lot of them were kind of tied up in IEP services. Do you have a vision of how you're going to kind of explain to parents how that extra time will give you more time for play? I think that word's kind of, I see it now in the socio-emotional, but I think it's going to kind of be integral for a large group of parents who are starting to realize the data on that, if you want to speak to that. And then I have a few small questions after.
So I think part of that, thank you for approving the curriculum, because now we can begin to work on the implementation and using the resource to really look at what does a full day program look like, what does that half day 3s, and what does that half day 4s. Of course, with room to individualize based on individual student needs, as well as interests and choices of the class as a whole.
I would just say including that word is important. And as we're looking at free, reduced and free tuition, can you get, and I don't need a exact number right this second, but like a rough estimate of the amount of our peers that are currently in that bucket?
In terms of the number who are paying full tuition?
Yes.
Versus the number who are paying reduced?
I would have to ask for that. I try to kind of stay blind to that.
No, just as you're looking at developing a program that our community is going to engage in and where that's going to be a
If I
part of
could just say,
Yeah.
for full tuition for the half-day program for 24-25,
Yep.
it's 55,298 for next year, and for a half-day program, it's 2,685. We're in the process of collecting information regarding like area towns and what their preschool tuitions are. So if we were to offer a full day, what would be a reasonable full day tuition?
Great. And just a few last ones. On the last page for the program proposals, in this, where would itinerant services live?
They would stay at Ward.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Maxon Kennelly.
A few questions, but I'd like to start by following up on that last one. I understand the itinerant services, especially for students who are doing that as standalone, but if you're in a full day pre-K off-site, in addition to that full day, you're then traveling to Ward for the service? So if you're getting speech, you're stationed, your home base is Stratfield, you're traveling to Ward when, at 3:30?
No, you would get the speech where you're attending the classroom program in district.
And so that would be the same for the Site 3?
Yes, they would receive related services as part of their time in school.
So do we have any sense of, is part of this placement going to be based on how many other students, grades K through 5 in that school, are also making use of that service? In other words, will staff be able to handle that additional?
That's where we'll have
Scheduling.
we'll have to look at caseloads, and if it increases allocation in one location, it could decrease in another location. So we'd have to look at that. That's why we're trying to be very careful before we settle on a spot. It could be a matter of, say, I'm just going to throw a school out there. It's say it's Riverfield, and Riverfield currently has 0.8 speech pathologists. It may increase to a 1.0. So something where there could be a slight increase, or there could be a very low caseload that they could handle the extra caseload of the ECC students. The other thing I want to add, because I don't think it's been said and people are watching, the full day 4 program, the 4+ kids, as we're calling them, the September 1 to December 31st babies, will take precedent. So that needs to be clearly demonstrated, so folks don't think that they that the expectation is that they'll get in. Then we'll move backwards to August, July, and so forth, in getting those classes populated.
And what is going to be, and maybe the law determines this, or maybe it's something we set policy. What do we do about people who change their mind in October, November? Is there anything that we can do about that?
Once they make a commitment to stay at the ECC, they will not enter kindergarten until the following year.
Okay. And can they withdraw from kindergarten and go back if it's not working out?
No.
Okay, so then they're committed as part of that kindergarten class.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. When it comes to those older students, is there going to be a half-day option for 4-year-olds and 4+, or it's?
The 4+ will be a full day program.
And what about the 3 to 4, the non-4+, the 4s?
If they choose, they still have the half day option like they did in the past.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was unclear on, at the bottom of the page that was titled, screen initial feedback from ECC parent survey. The additional 63 4-year-olds scheduled to return to the ECC, who are they?
Those are students with birthdays between January 1st and August 31st.
So they're 3 right now. Right, so the point being they're not part of the 4+ discussion.
They're not part of the 4+, but in the 24, 25, they will be considered 4s.
Right, so they're the ones who will have the option of full day versus half day, unlike the 4+ who have to be full.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you. I was also unclear on that same one, the 2 references to 44. The 44 families, I understood, or at least I thought it did, that those are any of those who are enrolled in the ECC program, were surveyed, you got 27 responses. But then what's the 44 of the second sentence? I wasn't quite clear on what you were distinguishing there.
It's the same. It's the same 44.
Messing me up. All right. Thank you. And then, yep, that was it for me. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Flynn?
Just a quick follow-up. My children were actually the first set that went from Ward to Stratfield, so we got an experience of both. Just philosophically, I'm curious, are you thinking of loading those 4, and this may be through the chair to Mr. Testani, are you seeing being in an elementary school being something you're favoring for 4 to 5-year-olds, or are you not married to either location for age groups?
We would have programming in all 3 sites. Full day programming in all 3 sites.
Mr. Mancusi, where are the ECC CLCs in this back chart on the last page?
They would remain at Ward and Stratfield.
So there should be a 3rd line possibly for ECC CLC. I'm counting classrooms, right? That's what I'm doing. So there would be one more line here for ECC CLCs, which would be 1 room at Ward and 1 room at Stratfield, correct? Because those are separate rooms.
We would have the space at Ward already, and we would be getting, if we stayed at Stratfield, we'd be seeking an additional class. We've already met with Ms. Ngowi, and there is a space there available if we go that route.
So again, I'm just trying to be very clear. ECC Ward, you have 5 rooms on this chart. It's really 6, right? Because the ECC CLC is a 6 room, is another room, right?
Yes, that's correct.
For Stratfield,
It would be a
5.
CLC first, yes.
Very into counting classrooms lately.
Ms. Jacobson, does that also mean, though, that those are students who aren't reflected in this count?
No. It's students that are reflected in the count who also get CLC support. So we can make a revision to that chart.
Matter of, I wanted to know how many rooms, are being, okay. And then I just want to go through some caps here. The full day classrooms, those will still have the 16 cap?
Our guideline would be, our target would be to cap at 16.
Okay, so going across the line here, I'm counting up 240 seats then possibly. So, I mean, we've been coming in around 240, so I just want to, because if you do 2 classrooms, 2 classrooms, 2 classrooms across the top, that gives you 96 of 16 each, and then counting up all the half days. So I just want to make sure that given our historical end of year enrollment, which is about this number, plus the additional that we might possibly see because of the kindergarten issue, does this actually provide enough seats for that with this number of rooms? Because see, when you do the full, you're actually reducing the number of kids you can take, right?
We could take, with this proposal at 16, which is the guideline, 256 students. I think, it's 16 times 6 for the full day core classes, and then for the half day classes, it's 16 times 10. So it would be 96 plus 160 is 256. If we felt we were going to be challenged by space, that's where we would have to try to phase in over time a 50-50 split, so we know we have enough space for our students with disabilities who are required by law to service.
Okay. And this is more of a question, I think, for Mr. Testani. Is there going to be a registration deadline for at least next year for the four pluses, so to speak? Like, when are we going to expect for people to make this decision by? If we can set that kind of because we have to plan for the space, right? So is there a deadline for this or no?
Well, we're gonna have
We've not
to.
gotten that
yeah,
far yet.
No, but we're gonna have to set a deadline. We've had some conversations around the fact that we can't just be flying blind entering in. But at that point, if someone decides or they move into the district and they're a 4+ and we're full in the full day program, they're gonna have to accept a half day program.
Ms. Maxon Kennelly.
Is that something that will start to be worked on as part of the regs for the policy we just passed? Is that where you see that information being determined and communicated out in terms of the admission policy?
I think it probably would be a good idea that we address it somewhere in the regulations, yes, that, because then it's a public document that will allow people, as they refer to our page, that'll be pertinent information for them to know.
And if I can ask one more follow-up question. So what will be our community outreach strategy? I mean, we've talked before about what are we doing as a strategy to attract more of the non-disabled peers? I mean, that's something that this board has, or whoever the 9 people are at this table have brought up multiple times. Now for this specific, in terms of the publicizing of that date, I actually respect that parents have not written more because they're actually waiting to see if it's appropriate for their child. So I enormously appreciate that. But to Mrs. Jacobson's point, at some point, we have a lot of planning to do about that, and this is uncharted territory.
Rachel's amping up for a after the new year campaign of getting information out. And we have considered what other communication options that we could do to let people know in town. Because as much as we put it out on social media and everything else, there will be folks that aren't paying attention. So we will possibly, hopefully, be able to implore our education media folk, Jared, maybe to write an article that could spring something possibly and get people to raise their awareness. I mean, people somehow follow the articles that are being presented when it comes to redistricting and everything else. So hopefully that could be something he may take an option to put a little blurb or something.
Wow, Mr. Krasnov.
I just have a quick follow-up to that. So are we gonna keep in the full day trying to get to 50-50?
Our goal is always going to be 50-50.
So what are we gonna do if we publicize this and a ton of people all of a sudden decide to do full day pre-K?
Once it's full, it's full. Then they'll have to go to the half day.
Okay, fair enough.
We're gonna, obviously, the students that are currently at the ECC take preference.
Could we maybe get an idea sooner rather than later before we publicize? Because it may be pretty crazy.
Absolutely. Hopefully we're full or not full or close to it with our current students. And I think that's probably going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. In some of the communication, it could be helpful to give people about the scope here, right? Like, there's not 600 seats, right? So for a full day 4+ program, there's
X number of seats, like we only have 96 seats in total. So minus out right now 44, and that's what you're starting with today, and that number is going to change.
so it's limited, but good point. Mr. Lee.
Just really quick, your gut percentage of possibly taking a third site, what would it be right now?
There's no gut percentage. You can
That
try.
was so
Good try though.
You can plead the.
Mr. Flynn, Mrs. Flynn.
Just a quick follow-up. Just now that I'm looking at that 44 and listening to your responses, do you anticipate losing any families to community-based preschools? That now that full day is the only, they would 4 and 5-year-olds would still have some semblance of an option to a half day? Or would they only have a full day option?
I mean, we want the 4+ to take the full day if we're going to prepare them for kindergarten. I think another year at a half day where they would normally have been going to kindergarten, I don't think that's going to put them in the best position possible.
Yeah, don't confuse me. I'm fully advocating for a full day program. I just think, I think we may under anticipate how married to some of our community-based preschools some families may be. So just incorporating that maybe into a survey may be worthwhile. I think we have 16 or 17 preschools. I work at one of them. So it might be worth adding to the survey just to see. It could be completely wrong, but you never know.
And ultimately, the PPT makes, the planning and placement team makes some decisions for students as well.
Thank you.
So just following up on that, so my son still, he goes to preschool and there's busing services that take him to ECC. So I think that would still to be an option for a lot of families who do need the before and after care if they are working families.
All right, thank you very much. All right, special programming fiscal analysis, Mr. Mancusi and Ms. Laborious.
Okay. We shared this document with the members of the Board of Education Finance Committee last week. We did PPT outplacement versus in-district programming costs, and we categorized those into 3 categories. We looked at our CLC programs, which is our complex learner programs. We looked at our mental health or social emotional behavioral programs, the Therapeutic Learning Center, which is our elementary program at Riverfield, the Relaxation Station, which is our program at Tomlinson, and then we looked at our impact programs at Ward, Ludlow, and WFC. And then we looked at the CPP programming, which is our programming for students who are eligible for 18 to 22-year-old services. They need additional support in their post-secondary transition, education, training, and independent living skills as determined by the PPT. So what we did on this, you'll see on the front sheet, we color-coded this in terms of categories by the number of students we currently have. This does not represent all of our students. It represents, these are the 3 primary categories that our in-district programming focuses on, and the number of students with a similar profile who struggled in public school that the PPT gathered and recommended change in placement to an approved private special education program. All these schools listed are approved by the Connecticut State Department of Education and are the schools that we generally work with in Fairfield. The following page, which is this page, this breaks down the specialized programming, CLCs, mental health, social emotional behavioral programs, and the CPP by location with the number of students in each location as of November 28th. So again, these numbers are fluid. Kids move in and out as appropriate, but these were the numbers as of November 28th. Factored into these numbers or factored out of the total cost avoidance is the cost of our staffing for each of the programs. We have an average cost for each of the outplacements. We have an estimated in-district cost, and then we have a cost avoidance, which is the last category or the last column on page 2. So you can see, based on our PPT placements, we're saving almost $16 million annually. In addition, Leadership has made a request that we also have our in-district early literacy academy, which we love to talk about. In your Friday packet, you'll have a memo from me looking at those non-PPT place costs. I know that was quick.
Just before we open it up, can that actually be added to this? I'm sorry, just because I feel like when we go to Board of Finance, they'll probably want to have just one piece of paper probably, but if that would be, is that possible to add it in or
We can add it in. What we can do is we can, if you want, we can make a different like category in different color, and then we can just add it to this. It's going to add about $642,000 on the cost avoidance per year, based on the number of students that we currently have, 19 students in the Early Literacy Academy. So factoring out the cost of where those students would go through a non-PPT placement or a unilateral placement, we can add the cost avoidance. So I just left that off. I didn't want to cause confusion with people.
I just want to add, thanks, Rob. And we talked about it. Mr. Peterson asked some questions in the Finance Committee meeting. Not only all the benefits of keeping kids in district rather than send them out, and I know this is not something for you, but for the other town bodies, as we mentioned, as we go through. I think the biggest issue that was raised is the other key component is even if we didn't want to run these programs, there would be no capacity at all these other facilities, as Mr. Peterson raised, to take on 225 kids. So we would be dumping kids in places that either would not have the capacity or would just try to do it and wouldn't be able to do it well. So I think this is great program that we've developed here in Fairfield. We should be proud of it. And on top of it, it does save money. But I think the biggest factor is that these are just good programs for our kids.
Just Donnie. Questions? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Just a couple, and I'm sorry, I'm not understanding this. On the front, I guess it's the front side. Why, if we have in the gray box at the bottom, if we have 0 students, why is there a cost?
We don't always have 0 students. So depending on the 18 to 22-year-old population that we're talking about, we sometimes have kids at those placements. And we very recently, in the recent past, have had kids at those placements. So those are the places we look at if we're not able to program in district.
So it's kind of placeholder, and that's what the cost would be.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make so we're not spending money on seats we're not occupying, which I know is a silly thing to ask, but and then this is just something I've raised in the past, but now this is before budget time. So again, any type of evaluation of the impact program in terms of having that as a separate standalone, as opposed to providing still a similar level of support, but within the house system, which of course is part of what the house system is designed to do. And I was wondering if now isn't the time for that question, fine, but.
I appreciate the questions we get from you on that. We are collecting information from the high schools specific to the impact program that we're going to share at the budget during budget season, and I'll be able to answer more questions specifically. I can tell you our students in our impact program are our most volatile. They're the ones with most significant mental health needs. So if we did not have that in our impact programs, those are the first students that we would not be able to program for in district. But I will get more specific information for you in terms of, outcomes for those students, but I don't have that right now.
No, and that's fine. And so thank you, because that budget question number 1 submitted. I'm familiar with these students as my high school still has the ES Effective School Solutions there, so I'm well aware of the profile of the student. I'm also well aware that the profiles are extremely different from one another, and that the way we do it now in Fairfield, you could be in a group session with students who are having very different mental health issues from you, but because you're part of the impact program, you're therefore, so that's where it has not always seemed efficient. I do not question at all that these students need a level of service beyond what is common for their peers, and without that, we would lose them, certainly educationally at the very least. But I don't know necessarily that having them in the impact program is what's working best for them because their needs are so different. So grouping them in a single program is also what I'm questioning. So again, don't expect answers to that now, but preview.
Just to address it a little bit, I do think that maintaining a little more separation from the house system allows us to keep the integrity of the program without it getting to be overpopulated with referrals. But I think the reality is we'll never know what the impact is, and there won't be really any true data, because what we're looking at with these kids is the possibility of some severe consequences, possibly. I don't think there's any way to really quantify it, but I think that the program and the way we do it here, and I worked in a district with ESS as well, and they do a nice job, but I do think that keeping it in-house allows us to be more flexible in who we do support, because they do have specific criteria and they don't waver from it. And sometimes we do need to make some exceptions for kids that may have some challenges that they may not pick up, but the impact program will.
No, and I want to be very clear, in no way am I advocating for bringing ESS back, so that it's, but to your point about, and I agree, I'm sure this is an easy thing to give me a data point on effectiveness, but it is a very strict allocation of staff who is serving just these kids. That's why I worried about the efficiency. And to talk about the integrity of the program, when we see 18 students at Fairfield Ludlow High School, they're not 18 with necessarily something in common beyond a tremendous mental health need. What those needs are very different from each other. And that's the integrity I question to a certain degree, that it makes sense that they need a level of support, not an argument, but that they need to be in a common group is what I do disagree with. That I'm thinking of a variety of extreme mental health situations, and they don't have anything in common. And so sitting in a group, listening to one student talk, again, this is getting down to the nitty gritty too much. I didn't mean to do that, but I just wanted to make sure I was clear.
Yeah, and we'll be able to respond to that at budget time. I do want to highlight when we converted, when we left ESS to put our own program Impact, the initial savings, and it's been year after year. It's almost $80,000 a year that we're saving by having our FPS staff deliver the service versus contracted staff annually.
All right. Well, thank you very much for putting that together and adding ELA at some point. Appreciate that very much. It'll be helpful. Thank you. Okay. Approval of minutes. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the following minutes: 11/20/23 BOE special meeting minutes, 11/28/2023 BOE organizational meeting minutes, and the 11/28/2023 BOE regular meeting minutes. Mrs. Flynn?
I had mentioned before, I don't know if it's worthwhile to make an amendment to remove the 11/20.
First, you have to make the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was asking I was just saying.
Just make a motion.
Okay. Make a motion to separate the 11. Oh, sorry.
It's not on the table yet. Mr. Asa, seconded by Mr. Peterson. Now, Mrs. Flynn.
Thank you. Rookie over here. To make a motion to remove the 11/20/23 BOE special meeting minutes. I don't know what the second. Separate. Thank you.
Can I get a second, just for discussion at least? Mr. Lee?
Thank you.
Go ahead. And Mrs. Flynn, then why don't you explain why you were making that motion?
I am making that motion because several of us sitting in the room were not a part of that meeting, so would most likely have to abstain on the motion.
We'd have to abstain on all three then if we didn't separate it out. So Hmm?
You wouldn't have to abstain, but it is a choice that someone could. So just to be clear.
Do you feel like you can't vote on them? That's fine. So let's just go with, sorry. You okay? All right, so we're going to go with that amendment to the motion that the Board of Education approve the following meeting minutes, 11/20/2023 BOE special meeting minutes. And then we'll come back to the 28th, right? We're going to separate them out. So we're just going to do 11/20 now. Vote for the motion. All in favor of the amendment? Motion passes unanimously. Now back to the main motion. So we're going to start with 11/20, that the Board of Education approve the following minutes, 11/20/2023 BOE special meeting minutes. All in favor? You just voted for them all. So wait, then why did we separate them? Okay, fine. Motion passes unanimously. That the Board of Education approve the following minutes, 11/28/2023 BOE organizational meeting minutes and the 11/28/2023 BOE regular meeting minutes. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Okay, just a couple of items I'd like to share. As was mentioned in the student report, Fairfield Ludlow High School held a Peace Day. Students and staff held a day-long peace celebration. Guests from the community and staff members and students held speaking sessions focused on life experiences from abroad, journalistic integrity, meditation, history, acceptance, and more. Students and staff also participated in the Peace Week walk and a Music for Peace concert. It was an exceptional day, and if anyone has any students, I know Mrs. Guernsey does, but two boys at the school, I'm sure they came home and was able to share the day's highlights. Unfortunately, it was interrupted slightly with the fire alarm, but it was a great day. Got to be outside. I just think it was a great demonstration given the climate that we're currently in the world. Holland Hill community learned about cultures and traditions through a recent International Week. The week coincided with Native American Heritage Month, and they began with a school visit from a Mohican tribe member. Other activities included student-led morning announcements in different languages, music, and adding a flag to the cafeteria collection. The celebration culminated with an evening event where Holland Hill families represented 27 countries with food, pictures, and artifacts, and students received passports and visited different countries. And that was held the Friday of CABES. Unfortunately, that always coincides. See if next year administration can stay away from that Friday so that the board members can attend. Connecticut Post did a great article on our ASL program this week. I heard it went national just this afternoon. It was impressive work that's taking place at Ward Ludlow and Walter Fitzgerald campus. Look at the Fairfield Public Schools Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages if you haven't seen the article. It was well done, and it's getting a lot of recognition. So kudos to our staff and our students participating in that program. Obviously, it's going to probably bolster the requisitions at course selection time, but we'll make adjustments. Riverfield and Sacred Heart Partnership. Each year, Riverfield runs an all-school book program where all classrooms read the same story. With support from the PTA and Sacred Heart University, each student received their own book to take home and share with their families, along with resources and activities to promote discussions. This year's book, this story is not about a kitten, focuses on compassion and empathy. Mr. Asa, you probably will get yours now that you're. Oh, okay. They got them today when they came back. Kindergarten registration opens January 8th for the 24-25 school year. So it's out there. Anyone who's watching, please check our Fairfield Public Schools homepage. Click on the registration icon for information. And a reminder, beginning July 1, 2024, new Connecticut General Statute, as we've talked about, if you're turn 5 before September 1st, you are not automatically eligible for kindergarten. So we have a lot of information there. And I just do want to mention McKinley's PTA and staff hosted the World's Fair on December 2nd 27 families volunteered to create a table to share about their countries of origin. There were costumes, food, flags, and student activity. This year's World's Fair also included other school communities for the first time. So Jennings, Mill Hill, Stratfield, and Dwight represented their schools and shared what makes their schools special, places to learn. We had entertainment, including Irish step dancers, Zumba instructor, African drumming, Taekwondo, and other activities. And over 300 people came through to celebrate the Fairfield community and their diversity. And as I mentioned, we did attend the legislative breakfast on Friday. It was well attended by area districts. It was hosted by CES. And I'll give you a few moments if you want to mention anything regarding the breakfast and anything that was discussed and your impressions.
No, thank you. Yes, it was very well attended by our areas in southwestern Connecticut area, our region for CES. I would say the two hot topics were the kindergarten admission piece of legislation and the ELA curriculum components or resource components, since the waivers had just come out recently. So there was a lot of, I'd say, frustration around that. But I think those are the two main topics going forward and trying to assess if the General Assembly is going to make any changes. But that starts in February. So as the legislative liaison, I will be keeping an eye on any topics for us. And I'm sure Mr. Testani and I will communicate with our state delegation. But if anyone has any ideas or initial thoughts, always feel free to reach out to me on anything. Mrs. Maxon Kennelly.
Two quick questions. Was there any sort of general consensus of what concerns were raised by the boards of ed and employees, and who was there to hear those complaints, concerns, issues, or queries?
What do you mean by employees?
In other words, so when we had superintendents there, you had board members, was there any kind of consensus from that group of stakeholders around the kindergarten and the ELA? And what was communicated out and who was there to hear it?
So I think the frustration was the assessment piece. And they're not being, the state's not putting out an assessment. Everyone's left to do their own. Concerns around equity around that. What will look very different from community to community possibly. And just putting people in that kind of a position without any guidance. I mean, it was just a whole host of complications around that in terms of this. It's September 1, but it's not really September 1. So just a lot of, I would say the assessment piece was really the main topic there. The state reps.
State reps and some state senators from various
State reps and senator.
districts around the Fairfield County region.
3 of our delegation were there.
Any questions?
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to committee and liaison reports. Anyone? Mr. Lee.
So the HVAC IAQ yesterday to get approval for the first stage went in front of the Board of Selectmen. And they did a great job. They moved forward to it. The big challenge will be tomorrow night in front of the Board of Finance. I'm sure they'll be grilled through it, but from what I hear tonight, it's important that we get this, they pass it, because being the former chairman, we are on, that committee is actually on schedule. Any delay will cause the project to slow down, potential increase in cost, and we don't want that. We're ready to move forward, especially with the way everything works out. It has to be, the bidding for the equipment, everything has to go out in January. Otherwise, we're going to be pushed back even more. So.
All right. Thank you very much. Mrs. Lynn.
Hi there, just 2 quick updates. First on PTA Council. There wasn't an update at the November 20th meeting, so just to let everyone know. On November 15th, they were able to celebrate bringing back the Board of Education candidate meet and greet, which many of us in this room attended, and it was well attended by many of the PTAs. They got to meet candidates. They're hoping that will remain as they move forward. They also reviewed their bylaws, so PTA Council will now be meeting quarterly instead of monthly. 2 of those will be in person and 2 of them will be on Zoom.
So the next meeting of the PTA Council will be on January 24th at 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. And the next two in-person meetings of the year will be March 27th and May 22nd at a location to be determined. So I will update the public at hopefully our next meeting. And Fairfield Cares will be meeting on January 20th at 8:30 a.m. in this conference room. December, thank you. December 20th at 8:30 a.m. and I will be attending and bringing back any information.
Just a quick update on SEPTA. They're actually having their holiday party today. I had to make sure I got that in. It's well deserved, and look forward to working with them in the new year.
Anyone else? No? All right. Or comment? No. Public comment? No. All right. Motion to adjourn. Before we adjourn, wish everyone a very happy holiday season. That's my open board comment. Merry, happy 2024. Let's go. Recommended motion that this Board of Education adjourn. Mr. Lee, seconded by Mrs. Flynn. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, everybody.